moving on to part two of our final projects. You guys will see that this is definitely trickier of all three of these. It's awkward, and yeah, it's awkward. So, so some of these notes are going to be really similar for all of you. I'm going to try not to rush through it, but you'll kind of see that there's some similarities with what you guys can do. There's really sort of, I shouldn't say a finite amount of solutions, but there's really kind of like, a limited number of solutions for these. But let's get started here with silos. All right. So as you can see, we have a lot of awkward logos to work with, a lot of text, all these good things, and we'll get right into it. Okay, so for this, this is a little bit huge, so they're going to be give or take about like yay. I like the idea of kind of having your the logo, the main logo here. What I might do is maybe make this a little bit bigger so it comes out to maybe here-ish, give or take. You might even separate this line so you have your trick or treat for a cause on site night, maybe on the second line. And then I might have this help the world see this Halloween. It's a little bit bigger than your headline, maybe down here. And then that way, that sort of gives you this space to kind of arrange these groups of text. I guess I like how you have it broken up. I think just some like modifications to where you have them. So, having this area, still roughly be about where it is, and then the all collected eyewear here maybe ish, and then I would have this much bigger. Your contact information is usually pretty important, so that will give you room to have your contact information maybe along the bottom here, and then you can potentially make these a little bit bigger. This you could probably make smaller. I'm not sure what size that is, but this can go down to like 10 point and kind of be tucked in this corner, and then maybe even make your logos a little bit bigger, kind of like in this area, if that all makes sense. So I think just some rearranging this space here, make this logo a little bit bigger, and then that sort of allows you, if you move this down to this area, that sort of opens up this kind of middle space for it to give you some space to rearrange those blocks. I like how you have those blocks broken up. I think it's just kind of like tightening up the areas where this text fits, and there's different ways that we can go about that with either putting returns in there or area type so that you can adjust the area. Or again, physically going in and hitting return here, maybe hitting return here to square up that area. But again, sort of refining this a little bit to give yourself kind of this area. You started to define it a little bit, but just sort of define this area for your information. And having like a headline here and then the tagline here kind of gives it that left to right sort of reading through for your audience. But I think a great start for this for sure. All right. Let's see, there we go. So I think this one we're sort of seeing, oops, I didn't want to like make it too small. This one we're sort of seeing the opposite there. We have this logo is massive. I might, well, we can try it. I might decrease this logo a little bit, maybe even coming from the top right, I had to think about that, top right corner, and scaling it down slightly so it's maybe give or take here, and then you can have the trick or treat for a cause across the top, across the entire top, and then that gives you a little bit more room to kind of open this up and to break these apart. Even if you kept this together, it's kind of a big block of text, but that's okay. If you kept this together, maybe made it a little bit smaller, and then you can make your contact information slightly bigger, and then even this tagline a little bit bigger across the bottom. And then I think in general, you can kind of take these three logos, they're pretty well sized and arranged. I think maybe just making them overall physically bigger. And again, if this is a little bit smaller, again, going from top right, scaling it down slightly to here, that opens up, it doesn't seem like that much, but it opens up, pretty significantly. Maybe not so much to where this ends up, that's the edge of your black. So like this edge is actually visually kind of here. And that will allow you to open up these logos a little bit more. But again, I think overall, a really great idea. I think just some tweaking the logo a little bit and tweaking the text slightly just to make it flow a little bit better. But I think overall, a great start. All right, Kayla, here we'll go to your PDF. Again, great start. Interesting use of that type. I like that font that you used. I need to go into your Illustrator file and see what font you actually used. I think here you might have it like pretty well set. It might seem awkward, but you might have it pretty well set. But I would say that your typesetting here works pretty well. I might have this trick or treat for a cause again go across the whole top, give or take, on where your artboard actually ends, but have this this top line or the top part be your trick or treat for a cause on site night. And then again, you can even have this help the world see either down at the bottom in this area or down in the bottom across the whole bottom. And then we want to make sure that we're not leaving this little, it's called orphan, sad, this little orphan have it at the end here. Having that on two lines would be fine, but maybe having it go across here, and then you can open this up slightly bigger, or even have a return in between Halloween and this, and have it go here to sort of again either use that area type or hit some returns in there to kind of physically space, make that a little bit more square-ish, and then that will allow you to be able to make your information, your contact information, much larger. So I would have like your headline, tagline, contact information large, and then you might have this bottom area. I would have your logos sort of in one line maybe, and try those across this space once you have this kind of arranged. Again, you could kind of, this, I don't think you might have to move it around, obviously move it around, you might have to resize it a little bit, but we'll see. But I think even just moving this down a little bit and then having your headline be, kind of large, but you'll have some space to sort of open up these logos. But I think overall, again, great font choice, great headline. Again, I think maybe separating that headline, having your tagline be at the bottom, your information much bigger, so sort of close this gap, and sort of resizing and rearranging this middle text can help us really, really work well. Oops. As I open that twice. Samuel. So this one. Again, some great elements. It's pixelating a little bit as I zoom, but some great elements. I like this idea of the trick or treat for a cause. I don't know that you need the ellipses there. I like the idea of them. But even if you had the ellipses just at the end here and get rid of them there, and then maybe get rid of the period there, you can have your R much smaller, and have that baseline shift go up. I think there actually is a superscript option as well that we can have, so it's actually like a little registered mark instead of a big R. But I like this idea. I'm thinking maybe having, again, sort of like the last one, moving this down a little bit, and then having your trick or treat sort of flow over the top of here, and then you could have effectively have your logo fit in like kind of this area, and then you could have this sort of repeated twice here. So you have either get rid of that one and keep this on the same line. I think the bulk of where you need to work on is rearranging this type, and having that sort of fit sort of this area. And I think having, again, move this down, have this sort of headline move up and to the left, that will sort of open up this area, kind of close this gap slightly, and then allow you to really have this area to arrange your text within. I like how you have these broken up. Again, I think it's just sort of like arranging those instead of just having them left justified, and sort of having the sentences awkwardly sort of line up. I like the logos. I think the sizes compared to each other, I think, work well. I think you could bring the spacing in a little bit and then make the logos a little bit bigger. It's going to depend on how things sort of flow in this area once we have this area kind of arranged. But really kind of try to set it up again so you have this kind of bracketed, you have logo, 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 headline, sort of in a C shape visually, and then you have this sort of more, um, I wanted to say normal. I don't want to say normal, but you know what I mean. You have this sort of normal square-ish area, so you have a less awkward space to rearrange your text within this area. I think it's a great start, though. All right, Max. All right, I'm gonna put a weird JPEG here, and I'll make this a little bit bigger. It's gonna pixelate, but again, I think swapping your headline sizing and your tagline, I think would work well there. Again, maybe even shifting this down a little bit to have the headline go across the top of here. I think you could actually make these logos smaller. Definitely the AAA one a little bit smaller. It's a bit visually larger than these other two. But I think you might even be able to make these a little bit smaller, and make again, sort of swap the sizing even on these two lines. And then again, you would have this sort of square area here generally to break up this text. You have like this sort of large block of text here that you could break up a little bit visually. You can make it a little bit smaller, and then I would definitely have the contact information totally disappears. So I would have the contact information definitely more significant. Again, look through some of the other comments that I made for some of the others to, not necessarily copy, but to sort of get an idea for the kind of things that I'm talking about there. But I think, yeah, again, resizing some of the logos here, again, will sort of open up this more sort of square area to be a little bit easier to work with rather than this sort of large, awkward space. But you want to make sure that you're not dropping, or you're not visually dropping that contact information. That's probably one of the more important, or the most important part of any of these kind of ads, is the contact info. And really just kind of breaking this up. You could probably make this significantly smaller and break up these into a couple paragraphs or something like that. And then don't forget that legal copy that needs to go in there somewhere, either like bottom left, bottom right. Doesn't really matter as long as that legal disclosure is in there. But yeah, again, I think with a lot of these, some tweaking with the text and sizing and things like that to make these work well. All right, Haley, open up the JPEG. So this, I wonder if I do this with the illustrator. All right. So I'm going to zoom in a bit, and it's going to pixelate, but again, a little bit of a different look. I think we have a really good start. Again, some of the similar comments. I like how you have it sort of broken up, so you give yourself this kind of rectangular area to work with. I think that works well. I think some moving things around a little bit, again, maybe making this smaller. Well, now that I say that, I'm rethinking it. Maybe make it slightly smaller and see if it can fit sort of in this area, and then have your trick or treat sort of fill up this area, the trick or treat for a cause on site night. You might even, I like what I see what you're doing, and I kind of like it where you have this sort of offset, so you give yourself this space with the logos. But I would say push the logos down to the bottom maybe in sort of this area, or depending on where your artboard is, even in this, give or take, in this area, you could potentially make them bigger. If you need to make this logo a little bit smaller, that's fine, this logo here. But to fill that gap with those logos there, and I might try either center justifying this together with that, or even if you want to have it offset slightly, that's totally fine. But then you would have your trick or treat for a cause on site night, and then maybe slightly make that smaller, and you can keep it on one line. And then, again, we can sort of give yourself this square area, which you started to help the world. So it is Halloween, great. And then it's really sort of this block to either break out visually or make it a little bit smaller. And again, we're kind of losing our contact information. So if our contact information took up, this space-ish, and then, sort of making this a little bit smaller, or just breaking this up a little bit visually. But I think sort of rearranging some of your headline elements to the bottom, like the logos, and arranging the headline slightly to sort of even it out a little bit, But I think a really good start, definitely a different look um, for this than others have done so far. But yeah, good start. Right, Carter. Dun, dun, dun. Go to your JPEG. And then again, yeah. So again, we have a good start. This is kind of what I was talking about with the last one. Um, I think overall, I think visually, um, weight wise and things like that, things make sense. Um, I think maybe trying to break up this text a little bit, kind of like some others have done. Not, again, sort of not to copy, but if you did like trick or treat for a cause, and then maybe on site night or having the 10th annual site night be a little bit bigger. I might bump this up slightly, like physically move it up, um, and then maybe make it a little bit smaller or less bold, just so it doesn't take up so much sort of visual information or visual space. But if you had this a little bit larger and then this a little bit smaller, less bold, give or take in the same area, and then you can move this up a little bit, and then that gives you some room. Really, the sort of, I guess, major problem areas, the logos. You could potentially put these on one line across the bottom here, give or take, or I would put these on one line rather than trying to like. I see what you're doing, but they're kind of awkward to have in that like kind of square area as you have them. Or even if you try to have the lens crafters on the bottom and these two on the top, maybe. But having this sort of be in the square-ish kind of format is tricky. But moving these up a little bit might give you some room to fit these at least either like maybe in this kind of area, or either maybe not all the way across, but um, even if it fits kind of like in this give or take area, you could have your 10th annual site night or help the world see. I don't think you have that in there. No. So you could have your tagline that help the world see this Halloween or whatever that tagline is that's in there. Again, moving this up, putting these on one line, give or take here. You might even make that slightly bigger, and then having your tagline in there. I think your contact information works really well. I might even make these less bold and keep these how they are. But I like how that you have the sitenight.org and the phone number popping out. I think where they get competitive visually is where you have this and this about the same size. So like visually, um, as far as visual importance, that's why you should probably have this be a little bit less bold or even smaller, so that you see, trick or treat for a cause, logos, contact information. Honestly, if people read this block, great. If they don't, they're not technically missing a whole lot. But yeah, I think again some tweaking and arranging, I think you'd have a really strong ad. All right, Ryan. I'm gonna size this. Oops, that's not what I want to do. All right, let's go back to here. I wanted to resize and it did not. Okay. So again, it's kind of tricky to see where your artboard is. I think again, some similar information. You don't have to have. You got to watch what you copy and paste. You just need the copyright 2016 LensCrafters, blah blah blah. You don't need to have the. That's the technical information for you guys, not for the ad. Again, I think you're having somewhat of a similar issue as Carter did with having these be in sort of the square-ish area. Even if we made this logo a little bit smaller, and I would make sure it looks a little bit maybe vertically squished. Double check that you're not distorting your logo when you're resizing. Excuse me. Double check that you're not distorting your logo when resizing. But again, even maybe making this a little bit smaller, and having your headline go across the top. And I do like, essentially how you have this broken up. I was looking for the all caps. The all caps isn't bad. I might break these two. So for the start out with the for information, have that be on its own. Maybe have this be the same size. I might go upper lowercase for this one, and then all uppercase for this, and make it a little bit larger. Maybe make this a little bit smaller with the phone number and the web address. I might um, go with a little bit more straightforward font. We don't want to necessarily make it kind of visually confusing where how the baseline kind of shifts throughout this. You get this kind of like wavy-ish look. You don't want any kind of like important information to be visually confusing at all. And then I would potentially have your Help the World, see this Halloween at the bottom, and then arrange these on like one line. Again, if you made this a little bit smaller overall, you might even be able to have it go underneath most of this here. Have your legal disclosure be at the bottom here. And then that opens up space for your logos sort of on one line. Maybe make them smaller, have them on one line underneath all of that. And then again, sort of give yourself this a more sort of rectangular space to work with there. But I think overall, again, this block of text is a little bit much. And then again, just watch what we're copying and pasting there. But I think it's a good start. Okay, then Brody. Let's go to, all right, that's right, we looked at this. This is going to pixelate slightly. I like what you did overall. I think it's very different, very good start. One of the sort of, it's not really minor, one of the sort of major things is we're doing black and white, so you want to make sure that this is white rather than this color that you have in here. And then you have extra text that you've added, which I would not do. Usually, I like what you have here. Sometimes it's like asking for permission, or rather asking for forgiveness and permission kind of thing. But I would take that line out because it wasn't included in the copy. Again, it's kind of a thing you could ask in sort of like real world application. But so to go, I'm going to sort of work from the bottom up. Sort of. I like your frame. I think that we could definitely keep that. That works well. I think we have a whole lot going on with it though. There's lots of frames, lots of lines, lots of boxes, things like that. I sort of like what you've done there, but I think we need to sort of edit a little bit with how much of it you have, right? So what I might do is get rid of that line, and then you could have all three logos be give or take a similar size. Get rid of this line because you're making the LensCrafters logo like super small. They're going to be like, why are we so much smaller than the Lions Club? But give yourself a little bit, smaller space, even if you made your logo slightly bigger. But if you had the three logos, give or take, visually the same size in this kind of area, you could have your LensCrafters, copyright info, maybe even in this area. And what I would do, you're totally losing your contact information. So what I might do is I would swap kind of how you have these treated. So this looks more like a headline. So I would have, this stylized more like the Help the World. So you had this definitely be your headline, and maybe try either getting rid of the background box here or getting rid of the background box here. Because again, it's a lot of elements, and then the way you have this broken up is a little bit awkward visually. I would have this sort of be one kind of rectangular space, and then you could have even if you made the text smaller, and then you could have your information, your contact information in this. Even if you had again, if you had this font treated like this, left the box in there, had this area not in a box, and then had your contact info in another smaller box. It's just a lot of heavy black at the top. So if you sort of bracketed with like thinner black contact info, and then the black on white general information in the middle, might sort of visually work so it's not so heavy. So I just think that there's a lot of elements going on. There's lots of boxes, lots of squares, lots of shapes. You have your, again, I think that your frame works really well. I don't know if you necessarily need this thin square frame, since you sort of already sort of have it framed out, I would try it without it. Um, I see what you're doing. You might keep the outside one. Um, I might get rid of the inside one just to see. Again, it's just a lot going on visually. Like I see what you're doing, and I think that it works well. But it as sort of an overall design, but I think it's an informational design. It's a little bit visually confusing, and I think just some rearranging of that kind of stuff and some sort of tweaking visually, so it's not sort of so lopsided on the top. But I think overall it's really well done. All right, box. There we go. Already we talked about this a little bit in class. So this one's kind of this approach is tricky, as you can see. I see what you're doing. Sort of giving yourself, more sort of vertical area to work with. You can see it gets kind of trickier um, with text when you have a lot of text in a vertical space. But if you wanted to keep going with the middle area, what I might do is sort of leave that in the middle. I don't mind the headline. I might stylize your font a little bit more. Give it a little bit more kind of personality, rather than a sort of more straightforward font. And then I would definitely maybe make these I would definitely make these a little bit smaller. You could keep them on one line, um, have them. Now I'm rethinking it as I say it. You could have them sort of be left justified, give or take, or even right justified. So you essentially have like logo area, essentially this L for logo area, and then you could essentially have this relatively stay the same, and then you could kind of use this space for your contact. So even if you had for more information and blah 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 about that size, and then making the sitenight.org and the phone number a little bit bigger to fit this area. May or may not work as I'm saying it. But again, you can see when you are kind of going with like effectively 3 vertical columns, it gets a little bit tricky. But yeah, I think, moving or resizing these logos a little bit smaller, having them across either the bottom area, um, and then, just sort of literally just moving these. I don't think these need to be broken up as much. And then kind of moving, breaking this up, moving this sort of block down and a little bit bigger, down towards the bottom to make that contact information stick out a little more. And then just stylizing your headline a little bit, I think can make a really effective ad. All right, Keilani. Okay, so for this one, as you will see, oops, as I do that again, you'll see our sizing is a little bit off, and I'm going to do that for a third time. Our sizing is a little bit off. You are portrait when we need to be landscape, so I think you have your dimensions wrong, flipped, opposite. And I don't see your headline. So you want to make sure we cut off a bunch of the logo here. This one, I think when we go to, when you flip your orientation, it'll make a lot more visual sense, rather than rather portrait. But again, overall, look through other feedback and things like that, to see how you can break this up. This is just sort of like one, group of text, that is, just kind of one big block, and it's very easy for people to sort of skip over that. You want to make sure that your information is separated, just to sort of separate things a little bit visually, give it a little bit more, make it a little bit more dynamic visually, rather than like a big chunk of text there. And again, making sure that we're using the whole logo. We lost a whole bunch of the logo here, and we're missing the headline. I think the disclosure as well, and we're also need to make sure that we're not stretching our logos. But I think primarily, obviously, is the switching the format so it's horizontal rather than vertical, and that will open up a lot more things for you to arrange there for this one. And then Veronica. Boom. All right. Yeah. So this one, I like a lot of elements of this. I stopped because I think you're missing the AAA logo, so make sure that we're including all the logos. I think as far as the logos, though, with the two that you have, I think visually the Lions logo is way bigger. Um, I think I think you have a good sort of skeleton, I guess, ish. I didn't really want to go with the Halloween theme for feedback, but you have a good sort of framework. I like how you have these kind of broken up. Um, but what I would do, I would format these. Again, we're working in black and white, so I would get rid of the color there. Again, we can use your superscripts or your baseline shift to make that smaller and put that up so it's not such a big registration mark. Um, I might make this logo a little bit bigger so it's kind of like in this corner here. And then that gives you room maybe to bring it down a little bit. You could have trick or treat for a cause on one line, trick or treat for a cause on, and then sight night. If you wanted to break it up that way, I would make this a lot smaller um, and have it sort of in this area, and then you could have this again be a lot smaller, sort of underneath here. And then if you wanted to have this be sort of more at the bottom, I would put this on two lines, have this um, maybe generally copy editing isn't part of our job, but what I might do is for more information for your collection kits, um, visit, have that be on one line, and then site9.org or call toll free, and have that be larger across the bottom and have it on two lines. So basically, if you had a return here, had that on two lines, had this line with the address and phone number be larger, and then don't forget that AAA logo. And you could definitely make this Lions logo smaller. Maybe even have them here, and then have your Help the World See This Halloween smaller and like in this area, if that sort of made sense. But yeah, I would kind of set yourself up so that you have, making this, moving this a little bit down, larger or smaller, depending. I would say maybe a little bit larger, but basically set yourself up with the headline and the logo, um, and then even where you have the bottom formatted a little bit more evenly across the bottom, that sort of gives you this, again, sort of square-ish area to arrange so it's a little bit less awkward. But I think that you have a lot of your text is way bigger than necessary. So your informational text and informational text here definitely could be smaller. Um, Again, look through some of the other feedback to see where I'm going with that to sort of have that make sense. But yeah, I think overall everybody did a really good job with these drafts, especially for a lot of awkward spacing and a lot of awkward information. I would definitely suggest looking through, at least scrubbing through and seeing if there's anything that may or may not apply to your pieces for this. But yeah, I think overall, this is the most awkward one, so this is going to be the one that's going to require probably the most feedback and the most tweaking with this. But I think overall everybody had a great start with these.